Welcome to every third Friday for the month of December. I think we've hit on a really good topic for this month. Stress less, celebrate self-care, and build family connections through the holidays. I don't know about you, even though I look forward to this time of year all year, it's pretty stressful. So I think this is going to be helpful to me for sure as we navigate these next few weeks. We have three great presenters with us today. We have Erin Tynan, who is the Pottawatomie County Family and Consumer Sciences agent with us. Myrna Bonilla, the Chisholm Trail District Community Health and Wellness agent, and Tristan Cope, the Chisholm Trail District Family and Youth Development agent. So we really thank you guys for taking time to share this really important information with us. And Myrna, I think you're the one that's going to lead us off. So I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay. So thank you guys for joining us today. We are really happy to present this program, Stress Less, Celebrate Self-Care, and Build Family Connections Through the Holidays. This program was initially created for our soft launch of our Living Well Wednesday series. That series is actually a virtual learning series hosted by K-State Research and Extension, family and consumer science professionals from all across the state. Many of our topics touch on a wide variety of essential skills that are meant to help empower you and your family. Next slide, Tristan. We do want to acknowledge that KSRE is an equal opportunity employer. Therefore, we do not discriminate against anyone. So if there is a special request or concern that you need to allow you to attend our programs, please just feel free to reach out to us and we'll make the accommodations for you. Next slide. And Lori did a really good job already on presenting us. So my name, again, is Myrna Bonilla. I'm the Community Health and Wellness Agent in the Chisholm Trail District. And joining me today is Erin Tynan, the Family and Consumer Science Agent in Pottawatomie County, and Tristan Cope, the Family and Youth Development Agent, also in the Chisholm Trail District. And next slide. Okay, so our goals for today are for you to become more aware of how stress affects our bodies. We want to be able to identify specific stressors, but most importantly, learn how and really just start developing our own personal self-care plan. We will also identify ways to create an inclusive environment for family members of all ages and gain tools to manage family dynamics. We do hope that these tips will not only help you through the holiday madness, but honestly be able to use this during other stressful times that you experience throughout the year. Next slide. So first we need to identify, what is stress? So I'm going to turn this over to Erin to start us off.
All right, so Tristan, you can go to the next slide, please. So stress is a state of tension that arises when you experience demands from your environment or inside of yourself. Stress is something that everybody's going to experience in their lifetime, and it's normal. It's not something that's abnormal, but how we carry that stress and how we handle that stress is what is going to sometimes make or break us, and how we handle the longevity of that stress and things that we can do. We're going to talk today about some things that you can do to identify and then to develop a self-care plan so that you can help combat it so it doesn't become chronic stress. Next slide. So there's two types of stress. There's acute stress. It's often very sudden. It's generally short-lived. Physical or emotional challenge or threat. Like I said, short-lived, something like a robbery. Somebody cuts you off when you're on the road. Sometimes we experience that kind of stress before we get ready to give a speech, or we get in front of people and we're nervous about those kinds of things. And not that that stress is great, but generally, that stress is something, it's a stressor that happens to us and then we're kind of done with it. But the stress that really causes the chronic health conditions is the chronic stress. the ongoing exposure and demand. Oftentimes when you have that demand, you feel like you can't adequately meet it. Family conflict, when you're a family of origin, there's a lot of stress in it. This is something that can create that chronic stress. If your family is one of your stressors. Work stress, that's where we spend 8 to 10 hours a day. So that can be a very stressful environment. If you feel like the people that you work with, or maybe the work that you do is stressful. Financial stressors, there's high pressure work environments, relationships. These oftentimes are more subtle in nature and hard and difficult to recognize. Chronic stress is something that if we don't, take care of it, that again, we're going to see some of those long-lasting health conditions. It's really important to deal with both types of stress, but to really hone in on how your body reacts to that stress and how it handles it, or how it lives inside of your body, is really important to identify. And sometimes, like I said, it's kind of subtle in nature, so you don't always recognize it. One example I like to give is the night before I went to college, I broke out in hives. And I remember looking in the mirror, crying, like I just got done crying, thinking, I can't go do this. I don't even really know how to do laundry. Like, how am I going to go be in college? And I remember crying in the mirror, and I started breaking out in hives. And it never occurred to me that the hives were a symptom of the stress I was feeling. I remember going into my mom, I said, I broke out in hives. And she said, why? And I said, I don't know. I said, I think it's a soap. I think it's a new soap or something. Went to the doctor. I remember the doctor said, have you been under any stress lately? I was like, no, I've been fine. I was excited to go to college. I really was, but I was also super nervous. And sometimes recognizing, and it didn't hit me till actually years down the road when I look back at that, I'm like, I got hives because I was so nervous about going to college, but I wasn't able to identify that in myself. So stress is sometimes hard to identify, that we are actually stressed, and here's how our body reacts. So we're going to talk about some of those things.
Okay, so when we think about stress, most of the time automatically we think it's negative, but that isn't always necessarily the case. Stress can be positive too. So when stress is positive, we call it eustress, and the prefix eu it means good. So think like euphoria, and we're going to dive into that just a little bit more. Next slide, Tristan. Okay, so what is eustress? So those are the stressors that actually benefit us. So think about stress of the first date, how you might feel on a roller coaster, or how your body feels when you work out and you push yourself. So those are the types of acute stressors that push and challenges us, but it is exciting. It can also be about perspective. So Rachel Clues, who is the Southwest Regional Facts Specialist, she originally gave this presentation with Erin, and she gave a really good example about public speaking. For her, she really likes and enjoys speaking in front of people. Of course, we get a little nervous at times, but it's exciting for us. On the other hand, her husband hates it. It paralyzes him. So as you can see, like, perspective plays a huge role on whether stress is negative or positive. Next slide. So now that we've defined stress, Erin is going to talk about how stress affects our bodies.
Next slide. So stress is uniquely designed to actually help us. So when you think about our ancestors and the way we've evolved through the years, we used to have to utilize the flight or fight response in our bodies to be able to hunt and gather. So when we go through a stressful event, our body enters what's called fight or flight. Most of you have probably on here have heard of what fight or flight is. You know that when you enter a stressful situation, your body either prepares to fight, or your body either kind of detaches and wants to fly away from that scenario. And what happens in that time is, go to the next slide, Tristan, is that all these functions start happening into our body. The second that we identify our body, say, oh gosh, that's a stressor. Adrenaline is secreted from the kidneys. Cortisol, which is a hormone, is released, and this cortisol provides bursts of energy. Your heart rate beats faster, your blood pressure goes up, your breath rate increases. blood sugar shot into your bloodstream, your hearing and sight are enhanced. But what happens when all this happens is your digestive system and your urine production slow down to divert blood to more critical areas like your brain and your muscles. Your body is physically getting ready to go into a fight. And again, when you think about going to hunt, you know, our ancestors, when they had to go out and hunt our food, these things are all important to keep them alive. But the bad part about all of these things is cortisol, which is that hormone that I was discussing. When it is constantly released into your body, it majorly affects your hormone production, and it does a lot of damaging things to your overall health. Cortisol is important, but you don't need a lot of cortisol. And so that is what kind of causes a lot of these negative reactions in our bodies. And again, we do need this at times, but most of the things that stress us out oftentimes are like family conflicts, relationships, those kinds of things. Those aren't, you know, when those stressors are constantly happening to our bodies are going through this process, and then it's taking away some of the normal functioning of our bodies. So it's depleting our immune system. Our immune system is not operating normally because it's always in this fight or flight response. And so that's why you often see more chronic health conditions with people who are continually stressed, because their body is constantly in that fight or flight mode, and they're not allowed to go through the normal processes that everybody's body needs to throughout the day, which again help us fight, you know, sickness and disease with our immune system. Next slide. So this shows a picture of a brain, and I like to give this this nice little overview of this just because I think it's important whether you're thinking about yourself or you work with people or children. So when we get really upset and we're in that fight or flight mode, and our thoughts in our brain are towards the back in that occipital lobe, and that lobe in the back part of your brain is, it's not that it's bad, a lot of our coordination, movement, that kind of stuff comes back there. But when we're talking about our thought processes, having that back brain kind of thought process, this is where a lot of our stress lies. If you've ever gotten super upset with somebody and you just start ranting and raving, and then later on you go back and you think, gosh, I can't believe I said that. Your thought processes were in the back part of your brain. It's very primal, and things just kind of shoot out. There's not a lot of thought process. Oftentimes when you see a child and they're in a tantrum phase, their thoughts are back here. And have you ever tried to talk to like a 3-year-old who's mad about the cup color, and you know you're trying to rationalize with them and they just can't? It's because their thought processes are back here. And the only way that you can really get them to rationalize is to move it to the frontal lobe, which is up here. And those responses, you know, some of the things that are up here are, you know, when children are learning in a good environment, their thought processes are up here. Their safety needs have been met, you know, their nutritional needs have been met. They oftentimes can move their thought processes to the front part of their brain. But when we're upset, when we're lashing out, they're in the back. And the only way to move from here up to here is through oxygen. It's why when children get really upset that we want them to breathe. There's a scientific reason behind that. It's because it helps them calm down and it helps them move their thoughts up here. You know, when my 4-year-old, I feel like he's like night and day difference sometimes when he's in one of those phases where he's back here, and then, you know, 20 minutes later, he's up here and he's a whole different child. And I can talk to him and I can rationalize with him. There's no rationalization back here. And so a lot of, you know, our stressful moments, our thought processes are back here. And the only way to get them to go to our frontal lobe is through oxygen, is through breath. And that's why we teach children that. And as adults, we need that too. We need to take some breaths. That's part of what helps relax our body, but it also moves our thoughts. Next slide. So this just shows what chronic stress can do to our body. So basically every part of your body is affected by it. That's end of story. I mean, you read about all the different things that our bodies all carry it in different ways, and it lives inside of our body in different ways. I know I tend to get like shoulder, neck. That's where I feel like a lot of my stress lies. I grind my teeth at night. My mom does the same thing. A lot of times it's genetic how you carry your stress. And my son, he grinds his teeth at night. I can hear it. All the different ways that it can affect everything for, or if it affects your reproductive system. We can get headaches, lots of muscle and joint pain, heart rate increase, cholesterol, blood pressure. I mean, it affects basically everything in our body. So it is something that we definitely want to manage properly. Next slide. So each stress uniquely affects each one of us differently. I kind of just explained that. And how it lives inside of our bodies is very, very different. And so it's important for you to be able to identify how it lives in your own body. And sometimes you don't even know it until you maybe see it in somebody else, or, sometimes again, this is a really kind of reflective process that I hope you kind of think about for yourself, because what affects me versus what affects you is very different. The scenarios that we find stressful are different, and how the care plan that we have are all going to be very different based on each individual person. Next slide. Yes, basically just kind of what I said. We're all very unique individuals, and how we experience stress is all individualized.
So just as Erin mentioned, one size doesn't fit all, especially when it comes to how we experience stress. So stress affects us all in different ways, and it can impact us emotionally, physically, behaviorally. So we're going to look at each of those areas separately. Next slide. All right, so if we took it, let's take a look at this slide. So what specific physical symptoms do you experience when you are stressed? For me, I have increased appetite for sweets. It's kind of ridiculous how much I crave sweets whenever I'm stressed. And I get a lot of tension also around my neck and my shoulders, and they get tight. So maybe yours is something different, though. It's important to make note of your symptoms, because when you do, it'll help you become more aware when you are experiencing stress. And hopefully that also signals to you, oh my gosh, it's time to de-stress. I usually realize it's time to de-stress when I start to rub my neck a lot. That signals to me, okay, it's time to take a break, or relax from whatever it is that I'm doing or whatever it is that I'm stressing about, and practice self-care. Next slide. So next we have the emotional symptoms. So look at this slide and note your specific symptoms. Which do you experience? And feel free to share it in the chat if you wish. Again, perhaps yours isn't on this list. Write it down. Bringing it pen to paper usually helps us become a lot more aware. So sometimes these symptoms lead us also to behavioral symptoms. Next slide. So remember when I said I have an increased appetite for sweets? Well, I end up having to explain a lot of why there's little candy wrappers around my desk, because it becomes a behavioral issue at that point. And there are a lot of behavioral symptoms that can culminate and be detrimental if we're not careful. So as you can see on the slide, there's a few examples. You withdraw from people, you could possibly increase your smoking, you argue and yell a lot. So these are a lot of things that will end up resulting from the stress that we're experiencing. And really the goal is to know what our symptoms are in order to be aware when you are experiencing it, and realizing that, it's really time to focus on yourself. Next slide.
So we want you guys to begin to be thinking about a self-care plan. So when I talk about a self-care plan, this is so you've identified, okay, yes, I'm stressed. Here's my physical symptoms. I need to be doing something here. So this is kind of what I hope you begin to think about, or when you leave here, writing down some things that you feel like would help you combat stress. Next slide. So these, when I think about stress, sometimes I think about a toolbox. So when you think about a toolbox, you have a wide variety of things in there that you might need if you come across a situation, that where you need some of those things. You don't always need just one. Sometimes you need several things in there to help you fix the problem. I like to think about this as a system that you can tap into that helps create habits. Habits are what is really important when you're thinking about stress. I love this quote. It's by James Clear. It says, "We do not rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." So when you think about that, we know a lot of people, probably including ourselves, that can set a lot of good goals, but we can't ever really work out to achieve them because the system that surrounds us does not make it permissible for that goal to be achieved. And I'm not saying that goals are bad. Goals are good, but once you set that goal, put it up on a shelf and start thinking about, okay, how can I create this system in my day where self-care is a priority? And sometimes when we think about self-care, we think in terms of really lofty goals, right? Okay, if you're somebody that you think journaling might work, I'm going to journal for 45 minutes a day. And if you're not currently doing any journaling, it's really, really hard to achieve that goal. When we think about habits, 2-minute habits are really impactful. Just 2 minutes of trying to change something that we're doing in our day. And even a 2-minute self-care, little check-in, if we do that consistently through the day, think about how much that kind of adds up. And again, it's not so daunting when we think about taking 2 minutes out of our day for something. And that's how habits are built in these small little moments. So when we think about that, in terms of like, if you are somebody that maybe wants to meditate more or even exercise more, how can I kind of build that into my day so that it's a system, so that I begin to do it just instinctively, and kind of, build around that. Next slide. So these are some proven tools that we know through research work. It doesn't mean that these are the only things that you can do. Everybody has something that's really unique to themselves that really work. I used to swing a lot as a child. I still like to swing as an adult. And I just thought, like, I liked to swing, and it really wasn't that at all. And it's past probably like 6-7 years that I'm like, that was, as I'm an introverted person, I would go to my swing and when my house would get too full of people, because I kind of needed a break to like reflect and think about things. And that was kind of my stress relief. And I didn't even know it. It was just something that I always have done since I was very, very little. And those are, proven tools. Generally, you don't see go swing on there, but that's something that works for me. And I know when Rachel presented, she said washing dishes is very therapeutic for her. So breathing is one of those things, and that reason why, again, because it can transform our thought processes in our mind. Our body needs oxygen, and the more that we can get into it, I think about when you exercise, again, that's one of the reasons exercise is so great for your body. You're increasing the amount of oxygen in your body. Meditation really works well for people. I wish I could say I was a better meditator, but I'm someone that thousands of thoughts go through my head all the time. Oh, if I sit down to do something quiet, I'm like, oh, the laundry needs done and I need to do this. And probably, which is even more need for meditation for someone like me to slow myself down. But one thing that I heard a while back that I think is kind of along the same lines, but to develop personal think time. And what that is just a time frame, whether it's even 5-10 minutes of your day, where you're like, okay, I'm not going to think about anything right now. I'm just going to see what pops up, and just let your brain kind of go wherever it goes, and see the things that are reoccurring to you in your thought processes, and reflect on that. Exercise, again, we probably all know on this, we hear all the time in our world the importance of exercise, but this is a way to, again, to release a lot of that tension in our bodies, get oxygen flowing. There's all, we know a lot of the physical positive characteristics of exercise. And again, if you're someone that never has exercised and you like, okay, I'm gonna go to the gym for 45 minutes a day. That's a pretty lofty goal. How can I create a system that allows that to happen? Maybe I'm gonna go for a 10-minute walk in the morning. I'm gonna go for a 10-minute walk at lunch and a 10-minute walk at 2 or 3, and at least give myself that 30 minutes. But again, how can I create those small little moments so this becomes a habit? Stretching is another way. I feel like I need to stretch a lot. You might stop by my office sometime and I'm laying on the floor, like doing something, just because when I'm at a computer all day, I get up and I stretch because, again, the tension lives in your body and I got to get it out. Muscle relaxation is another one. Oftentimes that involves relaxing and tensing all the muscles in your body, beginning with your toes on all the way up into your head. Relaxing and tensing all the muscle groups kind of helps, again, focus on where the pain's at in your body and how to kind of get rid of that. And then self-talk. Are we talking to ourselves compassionately? Are we talking to ourselves like we would talk to a friend if we messed up? This is, again, something that I think we all work on. I know I do that whenever I mess up. I have this internal talk in my head. Oh, that was so stupid. Why didn't you do that? Yeah, you knew better than this, blah, 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 blah. And we often learn that from young children. How we're spoken to as a child becomes our own internal self-talk. And it's really, really hard to combat that, that negativity that sometimes lives inside our bodies when we make an error. And to stop it in its tracks and say, nope, I'm not gonna go down that route with myself. We all make mistakes. I'm gonna do better next time, and just stop that cycle. Next slide.
Okay, so another good tool to use is the acronym. If you think about the acronym BRAIN. So we'll talk a little bit more of other tools that you can use in the next few slides, but if you can at least remember this acronym when you are stressed, you'll have a built-in tool that you can use in order to relax. So we'll go through what each letter stands for. So B is for breathe, taking 5 deep breaths and slowly releasing that air. For time's sake, we don't have time to do 5 deep breaths, but let's at least practice 2. So everybody right now, just take 1 deep breath and slowly let it out. Let's practice one more time. 1 deep breath and release. And you can immediately start to feel like the relaxation that you can in your body, in the releasing at least tension in your shoulders. And then ask yourself, what do I need to feel calm? It's easy to put blame elsewhere and focus on that, but think positive. In that moment, think about yourself and what you need in that time for yourself. And then just imagine that feeling calm. And then at the end, reflect back on what you are feeling after completing those steps. I understand sometimes habits are not the easiest to continue if you don't make a routine, but if you can't do all of these steps, then at least just practice the deep breathing. Do a few of these a day and make note of how you start to feel afterwards. Next slide. So again, we don't all experience the same symptoms of stress. So that means that, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to managing our stress as well. Everyone is really unique, and therefore your stress management plan needs to be personalized to fit you and your stressors. So like Erin mentioned previously, there are proven tools to manage stress, such as meditation. I am the same way. Meditation does not necessarily work for me. I struggle, again, to stop my mind from going from point A to point B, think about what I need to be doing or what I need to solve. So it's hard for me to relax that way. For me, I need a creative outlet, something in my hands that I can create, put some music on in the background, and I am good to go. My boyfriend, he really prefers bicycling. That's his time. That's what he does to manage stress. So as you can see, it's vastly different, and everybody will need to develop their own based on how they manage. Next slide. So we won't go too in depth because of time, but these next two slides have suggestions for tools. And these are actually handouts that we have, and you will be able to find those on our Living Well website, and we'll have a QR code for you at the end of our presentation that you can go back to so in order for you to view these slides. You know, we do suggest for you to find methods that are ready to be in your toolbox, but it's also a good thing to expand your tools. So try some of these and see if they are worth adding to your toolbox permanently. We do have the handout broken down into categories. So you might need a specific tool for a specific instance, and that's why they're broken down into categories. You know, you might find that getting 8 hours of sleep helps you, or taking 10 minutes to reflect on what you are thankful for. You know, ironically, that is one of our next programs for our Living Well series in January, you know, practicing the art of gratitude and the benefits it has for our families. Next slide. So here are 3 more categories. You know, look through these. Again, see what works for you, what doesn't, what you would like to try. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Move on to the next one. You know, one really good explanation that Rachel said is think about a toolbox. There's various tools for various things. You don't use the same tool for every little thing. So it's the same for yourself when dealing with self-care. Find what works for you. And that's why it's important to continue always expanding on different tools that you can use to manage stress. Next slide.
So I hope you've maybe been thinking just a little bit about how you're going to prioritize your needs as you know the days arise. I know Christmas is right around the corner. When we first did this program, the #1 response to the stressors in their lives was family conflict. And probably people here would probably have one of the similar responses to that survey, that family conflict is high on their stressors list when they think about the holidays. And so again, plan ahead, set the boundaries, know your stressors, know the things that, and that's the first step in this process, is know the stressors. And be able to set boundaries. Oftentimes when we think about self-care, we think it's like, oh, these feel good, fluffy, like I gotta go get a massage. And that can be self-care. It's not that that's not self-care, but sometimes the most important self-care that you can practice is the hardest, because it's setting a boundary with somebody and saying, I can't do that. I can't do that this year. This situation really stresses me out, and I can't do that anymore. It may be saying no to hosting a holiday gathering. It may be, you know, telling your brother that, you know, what he said really offended you and that it was inappropriate, or you felt very disrespected in that moment. And those are really, really hard things to do. And again, it's not always, self-care isn't always fluffy and nice. Self-care can be saying the hard thing. But in the end, boundaries are something that you need to love yourself and others appropriately. And so sometimes setting that boundary is really important for you and allows you to still love yourself as well as those around you. Make self-care a daily routine. Think about it more as a consistency thing versus intensity. Oftentimes in our culture, we value intensity. Even in our, what is portrayed in the news and media, you never see, oh, woman eats chicken and vegetables every day for a meal. That's not the headline. The headline is, this woman lost 750 pounds. And everyone's like, oh, wow, how'd she do that? And we expect this like quick fix thing where, for 3 years, she's been eating chicken and vegetables, but we don't, that's not the thing that we see in the media. And so we tend to value these intense things like intense goals. Okay, I'm going to get out, I'm going to exercise an hour a day. And that is not what changes your life. It's those small little moments throughout your day of how you can create this system that supports your mental health, that supports, your exercise habits. And sometimes it's maybe not even creating a goal, because a lot of times when we create goals and we don't achieve them, we go into this self-deprecating shame cycle. Oh, I always do this. I say I'm going to do this, and then I don't do it. And then we tend to feel worse about ourselves. And it's not that goals aren't important, but be more focused on the behaviors that live inside of your day. One thing that I like to do that I think, again, gets you to focus on the right thing is in each one of those small little moments, ask yourself, if your goal is to be a healthier person physically, if you're in a hotel and there's stairs and there's an elevator, ask yourself, what would a healthy person do right now? They would take the stairs. Okay, that's what I'm going to do right now. Ask yourself constantly that question. What would a mentally healthy person do at this very moment? Would they sit down and journal? Would they maybe give themselves a little bit of time here to help process things? Whatever that, whatever works for you, be thinking about how you can incorporate that into your life and what that kind of person, if you know somebody that really to you really fulfills that maybe mentally healthy person, what would that person do here? So constantly asking yourself that question when you come faced with choices. And then find support. Find the people that are going to rally around you that help support that goal, whether maybe it's in a work environment, your home environment, with family, neighbors, whoever. Because again, we're more likely to change our habits when we have somebody around us that's helping us remind us who we want to be and how we want to get there. Next slide.
All right, thank you so much, Erin. Yes, this is a great segue jumping into holiday stress and thinking through what support can we have from our family members as we go through the holidays, especially with those large family gatherings, whether it is a traditional way or whether it's a new virtual way. We know that the family dynamics can be particularly stressful during these times. So for this next part of the presentation, we're going to do a deep dive into communicating efficiently with our family members, talking about how we can dive into that communication really and tools that we can use to reduce those stress times, and then creating that inclusive environment that's going to make the most of our holiday season. So with that, we want to hear from each of you. Type in the chat box, what is the most stressful part of a family gathering for you? This could be anything from finding a date that works for all family members. It could be getting your kiddos ready or keeping them entertained while at a relative's house. Or maybe it's if you are hosting the family gathering this year and you're trying to figure out a way that you can have those attending virtually or those all in one room together, how you can be spaced out, what you can do. So we want to hear so we can kind of set the tone for the next part of our presentation. I see some coming in here. Looks like it's scheduling, getting the house clean, missing nap time. Yeah, probably missing nap time for ourselves by that point too, not just our children. Expectations, other family members being stressed for no reason. Yes, stress can definitely impact a whole family, and then your tensions rise as well. Cleaning, a lot of cleaning on here. Some family members, yes, jumping into that family dynamics. Politics, yes, a lot of politics. We heard that when we gave this presentation during our Living Well Wednesday series as well. Again, some family dynamics, getting all the gifts purchased. Lori, that's not your favorite part? Man. Yes, so each of these are different ways that family members can get stressed and that it can be a stressful part of our family dynamic. So when we think through that and we think through maybe that communication piece, today's world, we're of course experiencing things like never before. I mean, we're going on a pandemic of almost 2 years now. It's forced those apart and it poses continued challenges when we're thinking about travel, the comfort of our family members, and each family member at our gatherings, whether it is including family members from our youngest, so maybe those infants that we have, to our young children, our teens, our maybe young adults in college, and then all the way up to adults managing their own children there, and then even our aging parents and maybe our grandparents as well. So we have all these different lifespans there that's going into different communications. It's going into understanding that they have different opinions, just as what each of you have mentioned, and then how we can handle those different persons' preferences during those family gatherings. So however your family chooses to celebrate this holiday season, it's going to be important to take in mind those different considerations, both when we think about traditional and non-traditional ways. So some of that comes from steps for success. So with anything, and I know a lot of us are within an extension role, so we know a lot of these steps would be forming that plan. Number one thing is to form a plan of what that's going to look like, and then form an alternative plan. I think we have probably gotten very well at this over the past almost 2 years now, coming up with plan A, plan B, and maybe a couple different plans on top of that as well. But making sure we have that plan to go ahead and communicate that plan with your family and that backup plan as well. Part of this is going to be making sure that you are maybe sitting down with the adults in your family and finding that great date that's going to work for most in our schedules. And is that date going to be a virtual setting? Is it going to be a hybrid setting, or is it going to be in person with some space this year? And then not only talking with our family members, but making sure you're taking that back to your own small family. So whether it is your spouse or your own personal children that you have, and communicating that plan that you have with your family. One of the best ways that I love seeing with any event with young children is actually having them mark on a calendar the date of that event. So if you are going to Grandma Erin's house and you're going to go this Sunday, making sure that you have that marked on the calendar with your child. They can draw maybe a Christmas tree on that date, or if they're going to go on you're traveling somewhere, they could actually do like a red dot for a car, where you can do some sort of special way to know where you're going to be. That way the entire family knows, in addition to your child. When you have them engaged in that planning process, it's really going to help with routines and sticking to a routine so they know what is coming next and what to expect. There's a lot of research out there when we're talking about routines and transitions with young children. That's very beneficial for them to know what to expect in order for them to thrive and not be as stressed during this time that is a difference in their routine for them. And then hopefully that's going to help you as a parent or you as a caregiver not be as stressed as well. With that is a lot of the setting expectations too. So if your family is getting together virtually this year, make sure you're having those conversations about how are we going to do dinner? Are we going to eat dinner together online? Are we going to open gifts online? Are we each going to take a turn going around the Zoom screen or whichever piece that you use and take a turn that way? What is the process going to look like? And then of course, when you're thinking of that as well, making sure that you're flexible. I think we've all had a great lesson in flexibility over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. And the more that you're able to be flexible and kind of go with what happens during that holiday season, the less stress that you're going to feel. It might be stressful in the moment, but you're not going to be taking on all of that stress if you're able to kind of work with what you have on that one and make different alterations, or just know, again, with those expectations that maybe it won't be perfect in the way that we imagined, but we can still make the most of it this year. So some ones I know we're probably familiar with a lot of our hybrid and virtual technologies, but it's always great to be caught up in a little recap on each of them. I know they often change quite a bit for the number of limits, or whether they're free, not free, paid, how many you can have on there, and a lot of these change quite frequently. So I would say if you're going to be referring back to this presentation even a month from now, so it's December right now, if you're going to be looking at them a month from December, I would definitely check to make sure that it is still true, because they do change on like the limits and the capabilities that they allow quite frequently right now. But for today, the most current thing are these different platforms that a lot of us are using or that we have seen out there. So Zoom is really popular, of course, and easy, semi-easy. I think it's gotten easier for each of us as we've used it the main way through our work setting. But Zoom right now, for the free version, It limits to 40 minutes and it has a maximum of 100 people. And so that is one way that you can use Zoom this holiday season. Skype is a video chat that allows group calling for up to 100 people, and it's free. You can have it on just about any mobile device. You can have it on your tablet, computer. One thing that I really like about Skype, though, is if you have maybe an elderly individual who does not wish to download something, or it's complex and you don't want to walk through how to download an app onto their tablet or onto their computer, you can actually just have them visit Skype, the website, and then you can go to like a free call, and it will just give them a link right there that they can click on. So that's super easy, and then they can email that link out. Or if you are setting it up as the host, you can do the same thing. You can just go to Skype without having to download or create an account or anything like that, and just click right on that link. So that's a really easy one for kind of multi-generational uses. Google Hangouts, that is one that is next with the little quotation marks on it. It is really easy to use, but it only allows 10 people on a video call. You do have to have a Google account, like a Gmail, if you're going to be using that one. But if you're looking for like group chat wise, that's something that's really unique about this. You can actually have a group chat with 150 people. So if you have a gigantic family and you want to message all the same date of when you guys are, what you guys are taking to a holiday gathering, because I know that's a really big thing too, is what everybody's going to take. You can have 150 people on there. So that's a great one for large group chats. When we're looking at Google Meet, which is kind of the multicolored one down in the bottom left-hand corner there, that one is more aimed at a business sector. So if you know of organizations wanting to host like a holiday gathering or something of the sort, they could use that one. And of course, they can actually accommodate 250 people. So that one has a very large amount on their free version. We just have to have a Google account as well with that one, but it can accommodate quite a lot. And then of course, FaceTime for our Apple user friends. It has some high quality calls. And one thing that I actually did not realize until I researched it a little bit more is you can have 32 people on one FaceTime call. So that's a lot of people, and I didn't realize that. I think the pictures would be like very small, or you'd have to swipe quite a few times to see everyone's face, but it is possible. So those are some different options out there. I know there's probably some that we have not mentioned today. So if you know of one, we invite you to drop them into the chat box, maybe a little description, or just send us a website or something so we can include that in some resources. But it's always a great way for, especially like your alternative plan, if you still want to be able to connect with loved ones at a holiday event, and you're not unexpectedly not able to, you can try to rely on one of these ones here. So we invite you to explore them a little bit. And again, if you have one that you know of, please share it with us. We are always lifelong learners here. When we're looking at some of those virtual ideas and virtual games, we probably have a lot of ideas on these too, but we do want to share some that maybe we're just overthinking or not remembering. And that could be, of course, a virtual meal. So virtual meals could be really fun in the fact that I know when the pandemic started, there was a lot of like virtual dates, which was really fun to see. So people would go and they would set up their computer and they would cook a nice dinner and set it in front of them. Maybe they would have a candle going, they would have placemats, and they'd be dressed fancy. You could do that too. So you could have that as part of your family dinner. Maybe you all have the same thing or was able to order the same item. So it kind of felt the same that you're eating dinner together. But that's something that's kind of fun and different, especially for those that live maybe far away and you're not able to meet with them on a regular basis. We're not able to get together this year. I know we have definitely Kansas weather this past week. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day for this coming holidays, but we never know. So if you get caught in a windstorm or if you get caught in a winter storm or anything of the sort, you can always try to use a virtual option. Would be one great way there. In addition, there's some different fun game nights. There's a lot of different games like Scrabble, Monopoly, Clue, all of those you can find online versions, and then you can share them online in virtual settings. I know one fun way that I did a lot this pandemic with a dear family friend, when their 3 boys, so they had an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old, we would play about weekly, we would play Pictionary on Zoom. And so it was really fun. They got to practice some Independence by creating their own Zoom through their parents' account. So they were able to send me the Zoom link, and then we actually played Pictionary. So they shared their screen, and we're learning different things that they got to practice in school, and then they are able to expand on because they talked about using like the whiteboard that Zoom has and all of the fun different features that their teachers would use. And so they got to share those with a family friend. And so we would play Pictionary, and then we would take turns guessing what they were drawing. So that was really fun. I think you can get some really creative ideas on there. Kids, they have a lot of imagination, especially the virtual component doesn't stop their imagination. So it's really fun to see. Something that could be really cool is having like a cousins night where all of their cousins could be online. And of course, parental guidance or supervision would be in the background, of course. But have like a cousins hangout if they can't get together in person this year, and maybe play a game like Pictionary. Another thing that you can do is like a virtual movie day or movie night. So there's actually an app, a Netflix app, and it's called Teleparty. It did have a name change. So if you're thinking of the same one, I can't remember what it used to be, but it's now called Teleparty, and it's an app through Netflix. And this actually lets you watch a movie together all at the same time. And it has like a chat room option. So with those that you're watching the movie with, you can have like commentary on the movie. So if you're watching like How the Grinch Stole Christmas or The Polar Express or It's a Wonderful Life, all of your classic Christmas movies, you can still like chat and talk while you're watching that movie to kind of get the sense that they're in the room with you. So I thought that was a really fun way that you can gather together for that virtual movie option. If that doesn't work, you can always schedule a video call. I know Android users has different video options that they can do, and then FaceTime with Apple products. And so you can just call them and they're on the phone with you. Have your charger handy. I know it will run your battery a little bit down, but it's another great way that you can still engage even with those who are there or far. That way you guys can still kind of have that sense of togetherness. When we're jumping into like that family dynamic section, I know I saw a lot of them on there, comments about what's stressful about our family gatherings, about family dynamics, maybe the politics mixed in with it, all of those. So when you're thinking of that, I want you to kind of envision it when you're sitting at your, just a family gathering in general. When you're thinking about that family gathering, I want you to use the chat box again. What are 2 words that come to your mind when you're thinking of that family gathering? It could be like noisy, chaotic, multi-generational, political differences. It could be fun-filled, it could be energizing maybe, or maybe it's draining for some. What are a few words? Just shout or type them into the chat box and kind of see what our colleagues are thinking here. Fun but chaotic. Yes, definitely. Any others that come to mind that you're thinking of when you're at your family gathering? I think fun by chaotic is quite cumbersome, Jennifer. I think it really is a lot. Loud, yes. Agree with Jennifer. Draining, sometimes uncomfortable. Crazy and loud, yes. Our family when we're all getting together, but in a good way, says one. Crazy and loud, but in a good way. I was going to say, I think sometimes when we're getting together, we do have a lot of differences, and that's what makes up a family dynamic. We have, generational perspective. If you look at it from different generations, you're going to have what our young children are feeling. Maybe they are so happy and excited to be there, but maybe that's starting to be a bit overwhelming for them, or it's taking that turn, and it's exciting, but they don't know what to do with that excitement because there's so much of that excitement going on. When we're looking at some of our teens, maybe they're kind of bored or a little bit on the annoyed side, but not annoyed, but maybe they're just not feeling it. They want to go they want to go talk to some of their peers, or wanted to be hanging out with a friend, or sometimes they might even feel a little bit embarrassed by if they have a friend that they've brought with them, or just sharing that intimate part of their family with somebody else, and that could be a little bit nerve-wracking for them. When we're thinking through our adults, of course, they might have young children that they're caring for. So maybe they're feeling a little bit stressed because they're trying to manage those young children and keeping them entertained. Or maybe they're enjoying some time where they get to talk with their siblings or their aunts or their uncles, their other family members. And then, of course, when we look at it from our aging loved one, from their perspective, maybe they're not as hands-on as in the past, so they're feeling a little bit left out. But they could also be soaking in a lot of that family time. So they could be reminiscing of some of those good times that they have. So one thing that's really interesting too, when we're looking at our aging loved ones, is going to be from the American Association of Retired Persons. A recent study was done, and they actually found that 31% of respondents said they have felt lonely during the holiday season sometime during the past 5 years. And then 41% of them have felt worried about a family member or family friend feeling lonesome. So thinking through some of those and thinking about those family members that we have that are going to have different challenges going on. We really need to recognize when they have some of that holiday depression and make sure that they're feeling included in some capacity during this time of year. So what can we do to kind of beat those holiday blues? We can do quite a few different things. I know that we've talked about a few virtual options, but when we're thinking of beating those holiday blues, we can really reach out and kind of start to create new traditions. This can be something as simple as maybe it is going to be baking, maybe it's going to be easy decorating holidays, crafts, having neighbors drop in and check on your aging loved ones if you're not able to be there. It could also be something that we can do with all family. It could be from our young children all the way up to our aging loved ones. Maybe they make some cookies or share something together. I know one of my favorite things to do with my husband's family is we have a girls' day and we all get together and we bake Christmas cookies and all kinds of stuff. We have fun. It's a full day. We go all out on the candy making. And it's not really for the product. It's just to have that bonding time there together. And we always try to do it at my grandmother's house. So we're able to be there with her so she's not having to travel. And of course, stay to clean up some of that extra mess that's added to it. Maybe if your family is scattered, maybe it is meeting at a small location that's going to be central to them, working together so that you can actually have a place where you are joining together in the center of things. I know a lot of stress actually happens from those, and I saw on here too, of the cleaning. So maybe it's actually going and meeting somewhere, like we use a community building, or you could use the church if it's available. So you're taking that stressor out of it, and you're actually able to be at that central location and not have to worry about that big cleanup or the big preparation for it. You're just be able to show up with your dish and then celebrate with your family. It could also bring out times that we are remembering together. Remembering together is a great time to pull out those family pictures or ask for those cherished stories from our grandparents or even from our parents. One thing that I always like to kind of share, especially going into this holiday season, is bringing out those photo albums before those holidays and kind of planning ahead with this and sharing again those fresh faces. So our youngest ones, when they go to that holiday season, so that they're able to know, yes, that is Myrna. Yes, that's Lori. Yes, that's Aunt Jennifer. Remember, this is Aunt Tristan. So you can kind of point out those different faces so they remember, because it may have been 2 years since they've seen all of their family members. It gives them a little bit of time to reflect on who they're going to be meeting. And then, of course, that planning ahead. And if an elder lives far away, making sure that you, if you're not able to be there, to have an in-home care going there, even if it's only temporary, but somebody that's going to be checking in on them that day, or just making sure that you're calling them to say, hello, how are you? Giving that small encouragement and support during this time. And then as we move in and we're kind of starting to close in, I know we're getting close on time here, making sure that we have those inclusive environments. Again, the holidays are a time where it is very stressful, and it can be a very beautiful time. You have the twinkly lights, you have the greenery, you have the smells, you have all these beautiful things, but all of that all at once can be very overwhelming, especially for some that may have sensory processing during this time. I know at times when you walk into a store, I can even be overwhelmed by all of the things that they have. So making sure that when we have these different environments, that we're inclusive to all of our family members. So for young children, this could look like bringing out some yoga. It could be bringing out some deep breathing or meditation. It could be having noise canceling headphones or having them go to a quiet room for a little bit, just to get a break in that noise. Just like Erin said, she had said she used to go out on swings when she felt a lot of family in one room. Maybe that means you take your family intentionally out for a walk, or even just kind of playing a game like hide and seek, or you can play One thing that's really fun is to take all the leftover wrapping paper and tissue paper and have a snowball toss. So you can break into 2 teams and then try to see how much snowballs you can get on one side of the room or clear your side of the room before the other. So you can play fun games with what you have there, just as a few stress busters or ways that you can engage in physical activity to kind of take that stress out. And then of course, making sure you're having adequate space. So that way all family members have room to walk. I know there's a lot of extension cords that you have sometimes with lights or decorations, making space for our loved ones. That way they're not able to have fall risks there. And then if there's enough space for all of you to really spread out or to move around. I know we're still living amidst a pandemic. So what are some ways that we can still stay safe if we're going to be gathered together in one room? And then last but not least, as we wrap up our presentation today, we want to make sure that we're building family resilience. Part of this is going to be accepting those circumstances and getting creative to maximize your enjoyment. So like I said in kind of the beginning here, we know that things may be different this year, and it's going to take some flexibility there and acceptance on how we can move forward. Be purposeful about how you're going to spend your time and energy. Erin and Myrna did a great job earlier talking about ways that you can really engage and build your self-care toolkit. And so be purposeful on how you're going to build that. Where are times in your day during this holiday season that you're going to take those 2 minutes of deep breathing or 2 minutes of your guided thoughts? And then of course, assess your thoughts and actions regularly. Maybe some people don't have all of those opinions that you do, but making ways that you can include everyone and be mindful of their thought process. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Erin, but we hope you guys have a great holiday season, and Erin's going to wrap us up here.
Next slide. Okay, so we're just going to conclude here and see if you guys have any questions. I did want to mention that when I was going over some of those proven ways to help combat stress, there's a lot of free YouTube videos, guided meditations, stretching videos, yoga, even to YouTube today versus even YouTube 3 years ago, totally different ball game. There's so much free stuff on YouTube now, good videos, great things that you can access there. So please check that out, because if you think some of this stuff, well, yeah, that's good, but that costs money, you can find a lot of free resources. And if you visit our Living Well page, which you can go to the next slide, Myrna, our Living Well page, there we have these past 2 programs listed, as well as the different resources that you could tap into of some of the items that we discussed. And we're just going to put a little plug in for our Living Well Wednesday series that is coming up in 2022. We did these past 2 in November and December. One that's coming up January 12th that I'm super excited about is John Calvert. He's with the director of Safe and Secure Schools, and he's going to be talking about A Parent's Guide to Social Media, which is such a needed topic. So please share that far and wide and attend yourself. And then on January 26th, we're going to have Gail and Jennifer and Myrna talk about cultivating an attitude of gratitude. So mark those on your calendar if you would like to attend. Does anybody have any questions? If so, you can throw them in the chat box or unmute yourself. But if you don't, feel free to, Myrna just posted in our in the chat box, as well as the slide, it has a survey. If you wouldn't mind filling out about this presentation, it'll just take a few seconds to fill it out. But if you don't have any questions, we hope you guys have a great holiday season and that you try some of these self-care tips that we have produced for you and that they work for you.
Thank you so much. To Tristan and Myrna and Erin, I wrote down 2 different things. One of them was that 2-minute goal. I love that idea about, try something for 2 minutes, don't try something, for 45 minutes, but the 2 minutes I can do. So I love that idea. And then the other thing, I know this, but I keep forgetting about it, is this breathe deeply. I mean, that does make you feel better. And so I wrote both of those things down. So those are things that I'm going to try and practice. Any questions for our presenters today? You guys have shared some really great information. I so appreciate you presenting your program this afternoon. I'm not seeing anything in chat yet.
And Lori, again, if anybody wants to, oh, there we go. We are all sitting in the same room here, so presenting from our Northeast Area Program Enhancement Day. So, but if you guys do want to revisit some of the information that we had, the original Living Well Wednesday site, you can go to that one and find the resources from today's presentation. And then Lori, where will this presentation be posted at? I see that it is recording.
Yes, we will put the recording in the KSRE Resources Teams page. If you go to the channels that are listed along the left-hand side, one of them is professional development, and that's where we put all the recordings from every third Friday. Lots of great comments in here about good information shared, but I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you again. Appreciate the information. I'm really excited about the topics that you have coming up in 2022. I'm going to have to tune into some of those, but thank you so much for taking time away from your program enhancement to present the program too. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Lori. We appreciate it and hope each of you have a stress-less holiday season.
We're all going to try. Thanks so much.